Okay, so I finally saw The Flash. It's been heavily criticized. Um, it's kind of a massive box office disaster, and now I understand why. It's really not a good movie. In fact, it's kind of a mess, which is kind of par for the course when it comes to most modern DC movies, or most modern movies. I mean, let's face it, but DC in particular. And I'm going to try to avoid major spoilers here, just in case you haven't seen it and you still want to see it. And if I do spoil something, I will give you fair warning ahead of time. But honestly, you shouldn't care about spoilers. Being spoiled on this movie, I really don't think it's going to change much for you. But just in case, I'll give you fair warning. Now, it's worth noting that I've never been a huge fan of the Flash. Nothing against the character, of course. I like the Flash family in sort of a casual sense, but I never really read many Flash comics growing up. I mostly know him from various crossover events or Justice League comics or the 90s Flash live-action TV show or the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited cartoons, which are great. And of course, I was kind of a fan of the CW Flash TV show for about 2 or 3 seasons, and then I had to tap out, as I'm sure a lot of people did as that show went on. But I can't call myself a big Flash fan. But even I can tell that this version of Barry Allen isn't Barry Allen. I mean, he's all over the place as a character. And I think Ezra Miller was honestly, truly just miscast. It's horrendous. And I think that's painfully obvious at this point. I don't know why they decided to make him so goofy. He's more like a bad version of Peter Parker than a bad version of Barry Allen. You know, Barry Allen is funny, he's got jokes, but I don't think of him as a joke. He's more of a joke than someone who tells jokes in this movie. And none of it is funny. The humor in this movie is fucking atrocious. It's kind of like trying to do Marvel humor, which I know can be unfunny too, but it's at least sometimes funny. It doesn't strike out 100% of the time. And this movie strikes out 100% of the time in terms of its humor and really almost everything else. I don't think I laughed once. I don't even think I smiled. I mostly just cringed. I mean, no major spoilers here, but there is a scene very early on where Barry is saving a bunch of horrific CGI babies that are falling out of a skyscraper. I have no idea why an entire maternity ward is on the top floor of a fucking skyscraper, but it is. And the Flash saves all these babies in agonizing slow motion, and he puts one of them inside a microwave for protection, as you do. And when he's finally saved them all, the microwave dings, reminding him that there's a baby in it, despite the fact that it's not plugged into anything, and it obviously wasn't on. I can't explain it. I guess that was supposed to be really funny. And there's another scene shortly after that, minor spoilers here, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman and Ben Affleck's Batman have small roles in this movie. And at one point, Barry and Bruce are kind of tied up in the lasso of truth. They've got it wrapped around them a little bit. And both of them start volunteering very personal, humiliating information. And it's supposed to be really funny, but it's not. Especially because that's not really how the lasso of truth works. I've never seen Wonder Woman use it on someone and then they just start spewing out random information. I don't think I've seen that. I mean, I think a question has to be put to the person in the lasso of truth first, and then they will have no choice but to answer truthfully. Unless something has changed in the way that her lasso of truth works, please let me know if it has. I just thought that was atrocious, that they just are spouting out this random shit. Barry admits he's never had sex. I mean, it's wild. Oh man, just horrible humor. And later on in the movie, Barry says a giant spherical prison cell looks like a scrotum. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he says. I don't know what scrotums he's been looking at, but it's just a giant sphere from what I could tell. What about that is reminiscent of a scrotum? What 10-year-old wrote this fucking movie? It's really remarkable how mishandled this movie is. And obviously it's a very loose adaptation of the Flashpoint storyline. And I think it's probably the least interesting and disastrous version of this story they could have possibly come up with. I mean, Flashpoint involves a lot of alternate versions of Justice League characters, and you never see any of them in this movie. They're either dismissed as having been killed, or they were never born in the first place. All we get is Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, and, of course, Michael Keaton's Batman, who obviously was the highlight, which is not saying much. Although for some reason, when he's introduced, he's a broken down loser and an alcoholic. I mean, how many fucking times do we need to go through this trope of older characters turning into drunken, beaten down bums? He looks like the dude from The Big Lebowski in this movie when he's first introduced. I mean, how often do we see stuff like that? I haven't seen Dial of Destiny yet, but I know for a fact that is how Indiana Jones is going to start off in that movie. Please make it stop. I'm so tired of Hollywood making it seem like anyone over the age of 55 is a complete fucking failure at life. And they don't even explain why Bruce Wayne is like this. He even says at one point that Gotham City has become one of the safest cities in the country. So what is he sad about? He's a success. It just makes me want to rip my fucking hair out. I'm so tired of these creatively bankrupt fucking cowards. I mean, it's incredible. They're one-trick ponies. Every character who comes back after a certain amount of time is portrayed as a loser who's down on their luck and usually an alcoholic. Every time. I mean, there's dozens of examples. I can't believe they keep doing it. They have no ideas. You know, I hope this writer's strike ends soon and they get paid for their work. But is it so much to ask for their work to be fucking good or different once in a while? I guess so. And the whole Flashpoint storyline starts because Barry goes back in time to try to save his mother, who was murdered. And they shockingly never explain who actually killed her. I mean, it's Eobard Thawne, right? But they never show that. I went into this movie fully expecting to see a version of Thawne in some way, shape, or form. But there wasn't one. And it's just incredible. And there's a lot of inconsistencies in the movie, too. I mean, Kryptonians can be killed by bladed weapons. I mean, maybe I missed something, but I guess because they're Kryptonian weapons? Maybe? I don't know. It just seems a little dumb to me. And they can also be knocked unconscious by bombs, but only some bombs. Other times, they shake them off like they're nothing. Just really silly shit. And one of my biggest issues with the movie is the special effects. Honestly, I was stunned by some of the dog shit in this movie. The CGI, as I mentioned, is from top to bottom some of the worst CGI I have ever seen in a modern movie. Everything looks like melting clay. It genuinely seems like an unfinished movie. Michael Shannon returns in this movie as Zod. But does he? Because all of his scenes look CGI to me. His face is like not real. It seems like he only provided the voice. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just looks fake. It almost never looks like there are real people in this movie outside of Barry and a few peripheral characters. Everything looks completely fake. And his Flash costume is somewhat presentable when he's not running around. But when he is running around, first of all, he looks ridiculous. His running motion is like insane. I don't know why he runs like this. And the costume lights up with an effect that is, I think, even more atrocious than Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern costume. And that is a movie that came out in 2011. A 12-year-old movie that was heavily criticized for its bad CGI somehow still looks better than this piece of shit. And then, of course, there's all the nostalgia porn. This is a minor spoiler, but I'm sure you've already been spoiled by now anyways, because it's been everywhere. It's just the thing that people are talking about when it comes to this movie. But just in case, here's your fair warning. Okay, there are cameos, CGI cameos in this movie of Christopher Reeve as Superman, Helen Slater as Supergirl, George Reeves as Superman, Adam West as Batman, and even Nicolas Cage as Superman fighting a giant spider in reference to Kevin Smith's story about his brief involvement in the unmade Superman Lives movie starring Nicolas Cage. I knew these things were in the movie before I watched it, but even knowing about it ahead of time, it still managed to turn my stomach once I saw it. First of all, it feels distasteful. I mean, a majority of those actors have passed on, and they're being exploited. I mean, I don't know how else you could look at it. Their likeness is being exploited for nostalgia, because nostalgia is being perverted into a patchwork system where they use it to cover up for piss-poor storytelling, and in this case at least, piss-poor special effects. It's a distraction. They're hoping if you see Christopher Reeve as Superman, your little jaw will be on the floor and you won't notice the garbage in this movie. It's fucking amazing how Hollywood constantly cannibalizes the past while often simultaneously condemning it. Just a mess of a movie, and it deserves to be a flop. There's no question about it. And hopefully the DCEU experiment as we know it is finally over. The Snyderverse, the whole thing, it was all nothing more than an incoherent edgelord's fantasy, in my opinion. And I'm glad it's done. I hope James Gunn can pick up the pieces and make something cohesive and worth watching. And as I said, just not a good Flash movie at all. Ezra Miller is in the running for maybe being the most miscast actor in a series of superhero movies. It's that bad. And I'm not just saying that because of the legal and personal issues surrounding Ezra Miller. Believe me, if I thought the performance was good, I would say so. But this is just not Barry Allen. And this isn't a spoiler, really, but if you have already seen the movie, you will know what I'm talking about. It is shocking how much of this movie's plot and exposition involves tomato sauce. You'd think I would love that, but I did not. Nothing really works for me. The emotional hooks are hollow, and I just didn't really care about any of the characters. And the last scene of the movie, as well as the post-credit scene, are some of the worst things I think I've seen in a superhero movie. I'm not even joking. If you've seen it, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's just so cringe. Overall, not a good movie. And for the Space Rock rating, I give it 1.5 Space Rocks out of 5. When it's not failing horribly at trying to make you laugh, it's probably making you feel bummed out and miserable. Let's just hope that James Gunn can maybe save this franchise, because right now, it's dead. There's no question about it. But if you've seen it, as always, let me know what you thought of this one. And even if you haven't seen it, let me know what you think. And I haven't seen Dial of Destiny yet. I'm hoping to check that out soon. There's only so many disasters I can deal with at one time, so I have to pace myself a little bit. But keep an eye out for that review if you're interested. And yeah, that's about all I got for now. Until next time, take it easy.